President Trump said Thursday his June 12th meeting with Kim Jong Un is still on, despite North Korea's threats to cancel the summit. The president also made the North Korean leader an offer: denuclearize and receive, quote, protections. Margaret Brennan has more.
I think Kim Jong Un is going to be very, very happy. I really believe he's going to be very happy.
In a remarkable public guarantee, President Trump promised Kim Jong Un that the U.S. will not force him out of power if he abandons his nuclear weapons.
And he'll get protections that will be very strong.
The president's remarks responded to North Korea's threat to call off the upcoming summit after what it called, quote, awfully sinister remarks made by National Security Advisor John Bolton when he compared Trump's plan to how Bush 43 disarmed Libya.
That's right. I think we're looking at the Libya model of 2003, 2004. We're also looking at what North Korea itself has committed to previously.
But Libya's government also collapsed 8 years later, and leader Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown. Today, President Trump said that was not his intent.
The Libyan model isn't a model that we have at all when we're thinking of North Korea. This would be with Kim Jong Un, something where he'd be there.
But warned Kim Jong Un that could still happen if he refuses to disarm.
That model with Gaddafi, that was a total decimation. We went in there to beat him. Now, that model would take place if we don't make a deal, most likely.
Margaret Brennan joins me now from Washington. Margaret, President Trump appeared to be at odds Thursday with the White House's stance on the so-called Libya model of denuclearization talks. What can you tell us about that contradiction?
Well, it seemed to be that the president was conflating two different events when it comes to Libya, but he was also trying to reassure North Korea when it comes to exactly what his national security advisor meant when he said on Face the Nation a few weeks ago that the U.S. approach here was going to be similar to what the Bush administration did in 2003 and 2004 in Libya. John Bolton, who is the national security advisor, explained he meant that would include having weapons inspectors go in. That would mean full infrastructure breakdown of the weapons program before they give any kind of financial reward. But when North Korea heard the word Libya, they issued this blistering statement yesterday saying, we're not going to reach the same destiny as what happened in Libya. They're thinking of what happened in 2011 after 8 years after Muammar Gaddafi gave up his country's nuclear program. He was then overthrown in what was a bloody, bloody civil war. So the president today was trying to reassure North Korea, saying, we will not overthrow Kim Jong Un if you give up your weapons. In fact, we'll give you protection, he said. But then, in the same breath as this reassurance was given, he said, but if you don't play ball, well, maybe that same thing will happen. He seemed to be saying that the U.S. would still go to a military option if diplomacy failed.
One has to wonder how that message will be received. Well, President Trump also brought up Kim Jong Un's recent meeting with Chinese leaders. Here's some of what he said.
I think things changed a little bit when they met with China. They met a second time. As you know, Kim Jong Un had a second meeting with China, which was a little bit of a surprise meeting. We'll see what happens. We are dealing with them now. We may have the meeting. We may not have the meeting. If we don't have it, that will be very interesting. We'll see what happens.
Do we know what is the president suggesting there?
Well, this seems to be responding to some North Korean brinksmanship, and the president's also gesturing to what has been a bit of an unpredictable factor behind the scenes, and that is exactly what China wants North Korea to do here. Remember, China still remains the main financial patron of Kim Jong Un, and you have seen their leader Xi Jinping meet with Kim Jong Un in recent weeks, as the president referenced there. And what some are saying is that China is trying to sort of game ahead how these negotiations are going to go with the United States. Why? Well, they don't necessarily want North Korea to have their nuclear program because it's destabilizing to the region, but they also don't want to see the U.S. get the kind of upper hand that would do things like allow for U.S. investment in North Korea, something North Korea has already rejected. They don't like seeing that U.S. influence, which can be destabilizing in their view, that close to their border. They also don't like this noise about reunifying North and South Korea in some sort of peace treaty. Basically, China's first priority is to maintain some stability, and while they want to see some kind of denuclearization, they don't want to see the game totally changed. So there are many levels of chess being played, and the U.S. and China don't necessarily have the same agreement on the outcome they want to see here when it comes to these nuclear talks.
Well, Margaret, what about Pyongyang? Can you remind us what the rhetoric has been out of Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, in recent days?
Well, what President Trump said today was that the rhetoric and the actions are totally different. He says that his administration is still very much in contact with North Korea and that they are charging ahead with plans for this June 12th summit. But we know yesterday the state-owned media released a statement blasting National Security Advisor John Bolton and threatening to call off those talks if the U.S. is going to ultimately carry out their plan of regime change, which is what they hinted at in that statement, referencing the Libya model. So what you're hearing is perhaps some brinksmanship from North Korea, calling off some planned meetings with their neighbors in the south, saying they might call off the summit entirely, really trying to push to see what they can get out of the United States, because President Trump has been very clear up front. While he says anything could happen, he really wants a win. Remember, he's even publicly talked about celebrating a nuclear deal on the border between North and South Korea. I mean, he's in some ways already indicating he so badly wants a deal that perhaps North Korea is trying to push what they can before they get to the bargaining table.
All right. Margaret Brennan in Washington. Margaret, thank you.